Select character screen. Press square to continue. Select character screen. Press square to select Ranger King. Loading. Please wait. Loading. Please wait. For text chat with other players, press the left button to open chat. Type message, then press square to send chat. For proximity voice chat with other players, press and hold the left button while speaking. Richard Gurgler says, cheap play goose. Me11man says, need tank for hive. Cloud Strider 61 says, where is the trader's camp? Kelrai says, Kelrai sits. Tilaranrahiad King says, just to be clear, 625 gears from before are to be salvaged now, right? Yeah says, yeah. Tilaranrahiad King says, in denial. Rogue Traveler says, just north of Corsair's Rise. Andrioff says, L. Me11man says, just need a tank to start hive. Brandon X says, wish they would've redone the Citry of Cutlass Keys. Stock Trader says, send me an invite to play. W1LDS says, anyone doing Dubalu farm? Silent Samurai 01 says, we ready to go. Nikolai Dante says, what happened to the masterwork material converters? Can't find it in the faction shop. Chiken Sauce says, does anyone know how crossplay works? I would have thought more expeditions would be up if groups from Play servers can form. W1LDS says, anyone doing W farm? Me11man says, need tank for hive. Lazzy Wolverine 80 says, listen al Giab. Oberia says, Chicken, this is a standard server and while there are some console players that came here, we are prob still near our old pop just a little higher. Lupko says, 700 GS heals LF Hive. Shadicus Maximus says, need DPS Hive. Tumbleproyac says, a data equals 0, Apex Gold Cursed Fire Staff /A. Bard Medicine says, gross. We have console players? Yeah says, yeah. Dricklin says, Dricklin dances. Dricklin says, Dricklin waves. Chicken, Sauce says, right, but legacy servers are crossplay as far as I understand, so this should be crossplay enabled, right? Bard Medicine says, I thought I smelled something. Oberia says, yes. Dancel Cole says, Sin Farm Colossus of Memnon. Me 11 Man says, only need a tank to start Hive. Globville says, need DPS for Hive. Oberia says, but most console and new players went fresh start. Chad says, this game is cross-platform now. Butterburger says, LF3 Zygoramet trial. Yeah says, yeah. Dante Arcane says, so for population the fresh start servers would have been a better choice. Blazzy Wolverine 80 says, we had no idea. Oberia says, for now, yes. Oberia says, but this server is pretty well populated. Chicken, Sauce says, right, so they should be hitting Amrine and Starstone and such, right? So shouldn't there be lots of expeditions forming for the low-level dungeons? Iron Joe says, fresh starts don't have a good history in this game, they all fall off. Ex-Priest says, this isn't a fresh start server. Dancel Cole says, Sin. Yeah says, yeah. Grood 11215 says, will we have PC players? Jetsika says, yup, Xbox here as my PC died. Dante Arcane says, no. Blazzy Wolverine 80 says, do you expect it to maintain high pop? Oberia says, most players here are higher LVL and prob not doing low-level expeditions as much. Iron Joe says, that doesn't matter, there's a group cross-server group finder now. Brood 11215 says, wow brother you wow. Mamoru says, I think its pop is good both high and low LVL. 5 Energy says, nothing like making it to the back of the PvP zone to have the dog who you just took out 5 mins ago want to go out like it's about to explode. Dabtaitka says, X-Hive DPS. Chicken, Sauce says, yeah I agree but I mean, on the other servers, the new ones, that we are crossplay enabled with, shouldn't they have a bunch of expeditions? Yeah says, yeah. Chicken, Sauce says, and shouldn't we see those? King Creamy says, X at Noble. Morthris says, consoles is for poor PPL you out. Shadow Storm 012 says, need some people for Regenede. Dancel Cole says, Sin Artifact Farm. Amazel says, so many folks using the healing staff / void gauntlet combo lol. Colper says, LFM for Colossus Menon, West Wall, Creed Pants. TH3 says, don't you mean we have console players? Mamoru says, what's wrong with that? Armin0 says, X-Hive. TH3 says, this is a legacy server after all. Armin Zero says, X Hive DPS. Amizel says, I hate metas, lol. Frey Haldor says, any Hive need DPS that knows mechanics range 701 melee 702. Groot 11215 says, shut up before I take her keyboard.
Oh.
Lady Muffins says, oh. Bad Gun 93 says, Lotta icon everywhere, can I get rid of them? Just noticed bunch new update. Dancel Cole says, X Sin Farm. Haunted Ice Cloud says, Dex Tank Trust. Finna Bounce says, LFM for the depths. Bad Gun 93 says, New GS. Von Hellsmith says, lol WTF. Nivea says, X Hive DPS range GS 700W/trophies. Squabby says, not sure if I should bother transferring to Fresh Start with higher pay. Frey Haldor says, GS is now 725. Brad Pitt's dad says, I wanted to do Fresh Start but so much to rigrain. Me 11 Man says, need a tank then we start Hive. Kelrise says, Kelrise flips a table. Ivan 713 says, A. Oberia says, if you don't have a job, go for it. Butterburger says, LF tank or DPS Zygoramet. Dancel Cole says, X Sin Farm. Fux says, Fux Bela. Me 11 Man says, need tank and healer for Hive. Frictabtite says, X Hive DPS. The God Gain Z says, Hive LF tank and healer a data equals 0, Gorgon's I, / a data equals 1, Azith conductors, /a. Korozok says, X Hive DPS range full trophy. Squabby says, will we be able to transfer to those servers later? I really don't want to restart. My friend Moo says, hello. Poloskia says, hello. Wilster says, X Hive DPS. Honier says, Honier gives the thumbs up. Bind item. Bound items can only be used by you and cannot be traded. Do you want to equip this item? Press circle for no, press square for yes. Bakarii says, did arrows get taken out of the game? Yeah says, yeah. Butterburger says, LF tank or DPS Zygoramet. Bad Gun 93 says, level still 65. I'm Aloy says, yes any type arrows and ammo. Datron says, yeah. Baljunky says, anyone running Winter Rune? Blue Tree says, LF tank and healer for Hive. Yuri 420 says, no. Sabara says, is your name Yeah BC you only say yeah? Bad Gun 93 says, ill heal for Hive. I'm Aloy says, no health bar for items. I'm Aloy says, no cost mana if you died. Yuri 420 says, pretty much. Pandatatafes says, I swear I've seen yeah say yeah 25 times in the last couple times XD. Squeaky Eltoy says, yeah. I'm Aloy says, yeah. Yeah says, yeah. Poloskia says, yeah. MMO Timmy says, yeah. Mamoru says, yeah. True Yoshim says, yeah. Myrtle San says, yeah. Blue Tree says, LF tank for Hive. Blood Raina says, yeah. Beck says, yeah. Jumping Lily says, yeah. Habiti says, meow. Meowsy says, TNL. Sigur Loveless says, what is hive? Nida says, hey daddy. Blue Tree says, 10-man raid. Sigur Loveless says, I'm a tank. Nida says, you're actually kinda gay. Lady Muffins says, a data equals 0, Orichalcum Fire Staff Charm, / a Wyatt Purple. Yennefer says, a data equals 0, Iron Ore, / A. Nida says, you're talking to a dude. Mamoru says, *. Tawny Kaiden says, you're actually kinda illiterate. Green Thumb Gamer says, anyone seen this issue before? My voice chat option in the settings won't let me select an output, so I am hearing the game sounds in headphones, but proximity chat comes through speakers. Ekdro says, nerd. I'm Aloy says, more better it's purple. Cloud Strider 61 says, nah. Hickoxy says, did you set it to Wumbo by chance green? One Kid says, do we have to repair weapons still? I don't see the breakdown bar anymore. Yeah says, yeah. Hickoxy says, FR though, what's your Windows default output device? That might be the issue. I'm Aloy says, no repair no death penalty for mana. Poloskia says, yeah. Frkdabtaitka says, need healers, tank and DPS for hive. Ashirian says, how do I change starting zones? Green Thumb Gamer says, nah, I checked Windows and it's all good there too. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad sits. Hickoxy says, weird, have you changed it by chance since booting the game up? Lowbar says, LFM Tempest R. One Kid says, how do you repair them then? I'm Aloy says, no repairing items. Green Thumb Gamer says, doesn't hurt to try the all, turn it off and turn it on I guess. D3N Machine says, with a hammer. Hickoxy says, verify your files while you're at it. Green lol. Mamoru says, it's a uninstall and reinstall. I'm Aloy says, items can't be broken now. Dr. Elazar says, a data equals 0, blessed rivets / a WTSX2. Hickoxy says, reinstall sys32. Lowbar says, need 3 more Tempest R. Basil Hayden says, X-Hive DPS. Man with Skittles says, LF Tank 2 Healer 6 DPS Hive. Frkdabtaitka says, need tank and healer for hive. Nida says, that is cool, don't care. Nida says, Yup would rather play with a sock than hear you. Frkdabtaitka says, need healers and DPS for hive. X0E says, Hia *. Lowbar says, LF tank / healer Tempest R. Hickoxy says, need Oz going for blood. Man with Skittles says, LF tank 2 healer 5 DPS hive. My friend Moo says. Uncle Carl says, X-Hive DPS. Comet says, have fun Short King. Lady Tarantula says, has coming 1 second. M4 Kanai says, X-Hive DPS, not my first time. Lowbar says, LF tank / healer Tempest R. Deadly Thief says, X DPS Hive. All C7 says, X tank hive. M4 Kanai says, X hive DPS, not my first time. Pandadathafes says, X healer temp. M4 Kanai says, X hive DPS, not my first time. Sigur Loveless says, X hive tank. Frkdabtype Ka says, need healers for hive X2. Squeaky L Toy says, Datron has playnet features is now recruiting. PBX/COV. No prudes. Lobar says, LF tank Tempest normal. Datron says, I approve this message. Sigur Loveless says, any hive groups going or should I start one to see what it's about? Man with Skittles says, LF2 healer 2 DPS hive. Ricatrill says, sex. Halls Zeris says, X DPS hive. The Syndicate faction has thrown Requater into a conflict state. They can now declare war. Lobar says, LF tank Tempest normal G2G. Ricatrill says, finally console players enjoying a good game. Ricatrill says, LOL. Prahoax says, X DPS hive. Imaloy says, why can't I pay taxes on my third houses? Sloppy Top says, anyone know what this ice castle is? Imaloy says, there's some problem here. Frkdabtype Ka says, need 2 healers and 2 more DPS. Jason's Legacy says, shut up earner spot my man. Beth Jezos says, is anyone doing Winter Rune Forge? Sigur Loveless says, X up for new hive group. Halls Zeris says, X DPS hive. Jason's Legacy says, tack this. Jason's Legacy says, watch asterisk. Poloskia says, okay I'm watching. Frkdabtype Ka says, 2 healers and 1 more DPS for hive X up. Weekend Mage says, 10 hours of running this stupid hive today and no kills on even the first boss bleep waste of a day. Weekend Mage says, another fun ags update we. Jason's Legacy says, new. Weeping Dawn says, I'll do gay things for gold. Man with Skittles says, LF1 healer hive. Imaloy says, no gay things, work hard and pray to God. Turkinator says, X DPS hive. Weeping Dawn says, God give me gold. Templar 1 says, glory be. Hugo Slong says, LFG hive DPS. Frkdabtype Ka says, need 2 healers for hive then GTG. Micah Halfstead says, glory be. Valind Rain says, is there a way to keep transmogs when swapping gear? Or just do it manual every time? Cardiary XQ says, LF Winter Rune Forge. Beth Jezos says, is anyone doing Winter Rune Forge? Fast travel. Would you like to fast travel to this location? Press circle for no, press square for yes. Hugo Slong says, LFG Hive DPS. Loading. Please wait. Man with Skittles says, LF1 Healer Hive. Viking 4 Valhalla says, Skittles. Man with Skittles says, yes Skittles. Hotboxes says, is this game worth getting into? Viking 4 Valhalla says, come visit my ice cream truck. Dorsey says, NPD. Domicron says, good luck pickle. Jeff Bezos says, only if you like aiding 20 minutes in a QTO dungeon lol. Dabtaika says, LF2 Healers Hive. Hickoxy says, depends on what aspects of games you enjoy tbh, personally I think it's good for what it is. Jeff Bezos says, waiting. Hugo Slong says, LFG Hive DPS. Rome Dunn says, is musket and rapier good DMG? Doppelganger says, hey Amazon, fix the sin boss already. Beth Jezos says, X-Hive DPS. Hartles Frena says, he'll do some pretty shady thing for some gold and some scotch, $0.20 is $20 lol. Glassroth Wolf Bane says, thanks for the blood port free wolf. Ulukafishy says, Oper takes a while to trigger huh. Weirdo Jr. says, hey Amazon fix the economy already. Weeping Dawn says, same tbh. Xox says, what you got for me? Xox says, Tai Chi. Wilster says, X-Hive DPS. Outcast 2 says, X-Hive heal. Xox says, Rogue Traveler says, hey Amazon let us adjust the UI scale. Yekum says, do you know what we spell? Geyserig says, LFM for Capri. Daleks Devon says, wow players are like, dog bleep. Nobody wants you. Weirdo Jr. says, hey Amazon, if I'm actively fishing, don't give me an AFK warning mutts. Weeping Dawn says, Amazon give me gold. Emira says, I am in fact dog bleep. Weirdo Jr. says, +1. Mamoru says, it's to prevent bots. Poloskia says, are mounts worth getting? Horse says, yes. Poloskia says, bet. Grand Knight Spike says, Grand Knight Spike has reached font color equals, at 63E, level 18/font. Time Alloy says, at Weeping Dawn God answer your pray come to me I'll give you 500 grams. Outcast 2 says, X-Hive heal. Pocket Jacks says, D. Weirdo Jr. says, being good devs can prevent bots as well. Weeping Dawn says, why Papa Hunter 0607 says, push and hold crouch. Marshall Poor says, I know invasions are turned off, but does that include the corrupted portals? Yeah says, yeah. Dabtaika says, need one more DPS than GTG. Mystic Darkness says, I suck mean D for 20k. Wilster says, X Hive DPS. I'm Aloy says, press 1 franc for join group him at Morningdale Weep. Pro Servo says, XDPS Hive. Genjuro says, need tank X Hive. Genjuro says, last boss. Sin Snipes says, are there like certain crafting abilities disabled? Ma says, what? Shan Riven says, LF1 Spear 4 raid. The Sheldonator says, holy 40 FPS. Sistakacha says, anyone bored wanna help with a Starstone carry? Sin Snipes says, did they change where you craft gems? Crow Servo says, outfitter now I think. Tawny Kaiden says, outfitters. Hikari says, L42 DPS Dynasty M2. Dask World says, lol are we in the keys for war? Tawny Kaiden says, where you make jewelry. Viking 4 Valhalla says, ill help. Von Helsmith says, what's the best use for gypsum orbs? Corporal Hicks says, any open world PvP going on? Ovaria says, PvP Island obviously. Shan Riven says, LF1 Spear 4 raid. Shan Riven says, LF1 Spear 4 Hive. Armin0 says, X-Hive DPS. Alexandria says, X-Hive DPS. Protoletum says, need tank X-Hive. Green Thumb Gamer says, is there any fast way to level weapons? Noob Tech Guy says, Noob Tech Guy sits. Doppelganger says, yay. M4 Kanai says, X-Hive DPS, not my first time. Tommy Kaiden says, kill lots of things quickly. Weeping Dawn says, Tin. Horse says, yes, use a weapon mastery XP booster and go to the farming spots. If they're still there, there's 2 pirate encampments. Doppelganger says, Batacast crossing and keep doing the activity. I'm Aloy says, you're welcome. Green Thumb Gamer says, thanks. Shadicus Maximus says, need DPS Hive. Horse says, Restless Shore, channel view post and the other place right next to it. Alexandria says, X-Hive DPS. Vita Milk Tia says, X-Hive DPS. Horse says, you can kite mobs of lost pirates there, massive weapon expertise XP farm. Little Rat Goblin says, X-Hive healer. Connor McLeod says, is Bold Caster good in Ka? Gentle Pickle says, see ya dude. Jumping Lily says, I wasted 5 season XP boosters yesterday thinking they helped me level up my player. Noble Duelist says, LG2 Chad DPS Hive, must have already beaten first boss. L Love Gold Coin says, lol. Horse says, _ Little Rat Goblin says, X-Hive healer. Armin0 says, X-Hive DPS. Warden says, GJ. Warden says, GF. Swing Very Low says, GG. Horse says, but yeah, channel view plus ocean view post, Restless Shore. Warden says, farewell. Grecia M says, Pinchy Russo. Justly 100 says, X-Hive DPS or healer. Q5 says, X-Hive healer / VG. Little Rat Goblin says, X-Hive. Moxus Spelldance says, a data equals 0, Formidable Warriors Cache, weekly, /A. Little Rat Goblin says, X-Hive healer. Horse says, gonna hit the hay. Stay classy, Valhalla. Morthris says, Algun Bleep Latino. Noble Duelist says, LG2 Chad DPS Hive, must have already beaten first boss, link me gear for inv. Kuka says, X-Hive DPS.
For centuries the throne
Young
has
4
been
NTV says, what's
yet
up
you serve
friends?
faithfully, never once questioning
John
your
Harrington
duty.
says, Oeo Gazaimasu.
As the heir returns to claim his rightful place, you have the honor of being the first to kneel before him. Let us recite the oath.
For the glory of Avalon, I swear my honor and allegiance to crown and bloodline the king.
Kalaya says, Kalaya makes a gesture of appreciation. Imaloy says,
The heir of Artorias! High King Gawain!
Imaloy says, something wrong.
Be strong now.
Proto Ledum says, Kuka flag PvP. Kalaya says, Brad Pitt's dad says, PvP artifacts are the worst. Proto Ledum says, need DPS X2 X-Hive. Brad Pitt's dad says, worst. Hikari says, LF2 DPS N2 Dynasty. Brad Pitt's dad says, got everyone but the one I want. Smokey Oaks says, where is the nest chest run? Mr. Chody says, I want the heal staff artifact and it's gonna be rough to get. Loserm says, a data equals 0, as if conductors, /a. Proto-Ledum says, need DPS X2 X-Hive. Hezi 197 says, X DPS Hive. Gaprio says, I've returned from a long sleep, it's been many months. Smokey Oaks says, LFG chest run. Proto-Ledum says, need 1 DPS X-Hive. Young 4 NTV says, everyone having a good day in the beautiful world of Aeternum? Milkai God says, X. Imaloy says, wonderful. Young 4 NTV says, heck yeah Aloy. Smokey Oaks says, LFG chest run I have never done one before. Kalaya says, Kalaya makes a gesture of appreciation. Kalaya says, Kalaya makes a gesture of appreciation. Goo5 says, X-Hive healer /VG. Kalaya says, Kalaya makes a gesture of appreciation. Imaloy says, where's I-57? Imaloy says, need some chest run here. Onimbus says, does cheese melt? The Quagmire says, anyone has the Discord link for this server? Noble Duelist says, LF1 DPS Hive, must have already beaten first boss, link me gear for inv. Magarat says, chest runs are useless now. Imaloy says, why useless any reason? Kalaya says, Kalaya makes a gesture of appreciation. Magarat says, no good gears dropping. Kerma says, 1 second heal VG guy. Shadow Storm 012 says, X-Hive DPS range. Smokey Oaks says, can I get a inv to a chest run? It would be my first time. Imaloy says, a shot but it's drop some thropy math. Helicopter says, is there an autorune button? Alexandria says, X Hive DPS. Chromelight says, plus equals. I'm Aloy says, pres equals. Helicopter says, tie. Kaaya says, Kaaya makes a gesture of appreciation. R3D says, LF1 tank 1 DPS winter rune forge. Brosis says, plus 3 DPS welcome.
You have a duty. If the king is here, why aren't you by his side?
I don't belong there.
How can you say that? Your oath is your bond. What could be more important?
My oath was to the king, not a monster. Damn it, Gawain is lost, Jay. A soulless husk. I will not serve such a thing.
Lost? But Minister Lochner says he's been preparing.
Lochner has joined his king in darkness, and so have the other knights.
Radigan says, Radigan sits. Goo5 says, X Hive healer / VG.
How did this come to pass?
Little Rat Goblin says, X Hive healer. Gentle Pickle says, sup. Jinmill59 says, X Hive DPS. Daniel Chpel says, GG. Smoky Oaks says, can someone invite me to a chest run? I want to do one at least once in this game.
Is lost.
Brosis says, plus 4 DPS winter rune forge.
Thank you. I suppose. Though I have no
Konok says, MM.
My days as a knight are done.
Weekend Mage says, X Dose Winter.
Protect Artorias and his legacy for
Halls Zeris says, X DPS Hive.
So you've been to Tenno,
Right
and
by
I will
blood.
fetch
I'm
your
Aloy
thing.
says, alright bud.
Sworn my duty to the bloodline. I will not oppose him, even if he is.
Little Rat Goblin says, X Hive healer. Jordift says, X DPS Hive. Shadow Storm 012 says, X Sin. Dragavire says, I don't think there are any organized chest runs RN. Nikolai Dante says, a data equals 0, vial of suspended azeth, / a how do you salvage multiple items of these - seems like you can only do one at a time now, lol. John Snoke says, X DPS Hive. John Snoke says, X DPS Hive. Noble Duelist says, LF1 DPS Hive, must have already beaten first boss, link me gear for inv.
It's not what I'm going to do.
Little Rat Goblin says, X Hive healer.
Fight in this battle.
I'm Aloy says, X Merc corputed for portal to get 2 artifact.
And
R3D says, LF1 tank 1 DPS winter rune forge. Ashen says, X Merc. R3D says, LF1 tank 2 DPS winter rune forge. Magarat says, what artifact drops in Merc? Weekend Mage says, Abyss. Chromelight says, 701 healer looking for to join someone. I'm Aloy says, Grey hadn't the Abyss axe. Toxiator says, X. Mo4U says, X Merc.
So you've been to Tenno.
Magarat says, oh I thought they gave new ones.
Can't imagine.
Toxiator says, X Merc.
This is worse than even
Ashen
my
says,
darkest
X Merc.
fears.
R3D says, LF1 tank 2 DPS winter rune forge.
As Knight Regent, it is my duty.
Flynn
to
Cosmo
defend the
says,
kingdom
X
against
Merc.
all threats. Lochner
Len
may
Aiden
be
says,
the
X Merc.
bloodline, but I know it to
Ms. Gutscrub says, X Merc. Gaprio says, X.
Until the last shred
Mrs.
of my
Goose
soul
says,
is
X Merc.
forfeit. First priority.
Cairn
is
Trueforge
ensuring
says,
Pride
X
is
Merc.
prepared to defend itself against whatever.
Gaprio says, X Merc.
Second, we must look south.
TTVXH3ARTL3SS says, LF2 tank DPS reg gen. Kelt Rand says, X Merc.
I just realized I sent Grace.
Halls
this
Zaris
note
says,
and she has
X
no
DPS
idea what
high.
she's walking into. You must go.
Wolverine says, X Merc.
She walks right into a trap.
R3D says, LF1 tank 2 DPS Winter Rune
I will
Forge.
return to Pridewell. As regent, that's
Nedrick
where I
says,
belong. Wherever
X
the
Merc.
city stands, she'll have to make her own choice.
I'm Aloy says, X Merc for 2 artifact dropped.
I'll say our farewells.
Verzael says, X Merc. Fling Cosmo says, X Merc.
If possible,
Len Aiden
defend
says,
Pridewell
X Merc.
and then return to Pridewell and we will
Little
make
Rat
our
Goblin says, X Hive Healer. Richter says, X Merc. Shag Shigatano says, X Merc. Noble Duelist says, LF1 DPS Hive, must have already beaten first boss, link me gear for inv. Doppelganger says, they ever gonna fix boss bug for Sin artifact upgrade? Padoff says, X Merc. Fat Joseph says, chat. Halls Zaris says, X DPS Hive. Drag Drogan says, X Merc. R3D says, LF1 tank 2 DPS Winter Rune Forge. Chanel says, X Merc. Delna V. Elon says, I haven't played since launch. What do I do? Shan Riven says, LF1 Spear 4 Hive. Canel says, X Merc. The Shave says, play again. Batmum says, run around naked and bang drums. Jordift says, X DPS Hive. Mamoru says, come back in another 3 years. Shiavani says, did level cap increase past 65? Mergtown says, X DPS Hive. Step off 187 says, X Merc. Halls Zaris says, X DPS Hive. Poseidon 09 says, X Merc. I'm Aloy says, Merc Group 1 is full. Wolf says, X Merc. R3D says, LF1 tank 2 DPS Winter Rune Forge. Roast Mary says, X Merc. Kemzik says, Max Weapon LVL. Soulkirk says, A. Shan Riven says, LF1 Spear 4 Hive. Soulkirk says, ASD. Glogville says, X Merc. Roast Mary says, X Merc. Shiavani says, nah max level in general ain't been on in a min. M4 Kanai says, X Hive DPS, not my first time. Wolf says, X Merc. Baby Gravy Johnson says, a data equals 0, defiled ice gauntlet of the scholar, / is this still worth using or not? Naomi Fox says, X. I'm Aloy says, make group 2 for Merc. Roast Mary says, X Merc. Mamoru says, 65 WDLC. Wolf says, X Merc. I'm Aloy says, get 500 gold and some artifact. Glogville says, X Merca. Noble Duelist says, LF1 DPS Hive, must have already beaten first boss, link me gear for inv. Shiavani says, THX. Alpinator says, evening all. 35 minutes till pulls for RS invasion and we still need 30 sign-ups. Come get your easy gold, Azith, Rep and Dark Matter, plus get a shot at 5k when we win and if you are in the Discord. R3D says, LF1 tank 1 DPS winter rune forge. Alpinator says, evening all. 35 minutes till pulls for RS invasion and we still need 30 sign-ups. Come get your easy gold, as it, rep and dark matter, plus get a shot at 5k when we win and if you are in the Discord. Halls Zeris says, XDPS. Post Severance says, do town projects scan for items in other city storages? I'm noticing a random delay when I accept they suddenly complete themselves. I'm Aloy says, we're heading to Portal 2. Glogville says, X-Merc. Roast Mary says, X-Merc. R3D says, LF1 tank rune forge. The Shave says, nope, just the town you are in crafting pulls from. Ixtraspisameo says, X-Merc. Goldberg says, X-Merc. Burklaw Grizzer says, why do yellows smell like piss? M4 Kanai says, X-Hive DPS, not my first time. Eistenser says, X-Merc. Anvil says, LFG Odo Flail / Vanish. R3D says, LF1 tank or DPS rune forge. Kansas says, X-Hive Healer 703 GS. Azazel Archer says, X-Merc. Rillier says, X-Merc. Senior Curly Toes says, Grey Sword Carry. Roast Mary says, X-Merc. Fast travel. Would you like to fast travel to this location? Press circle for no, press square for yes. Shadow Storm 012 says, X-Hive. R3D says, LF1 tank or DPS rune forge. Templar 1 says, nice, I'm going to talk to the female, former legionary. I didn't know women were in the legions, thanks Amazon, I had no idea. Loading. Please wait. Roast Mary says, X-Merc. Vardda says, LOL. Ixtraspisameo says, X-Merc. R3D says, LF1 tank or DPS rune forge. Diabolical says, die. Magarat says, Templar, it's the woke devslm foul. Roast Mary says, X-Merc. Outsider World says, yay. M4 Kanai says, X-Hive DPS, not my first time. Outsider World says, I might buy in this town. Noble Duelist says, LF1 DPS Hive, must have already beaten first boss, link me gear for inv. Major Motives says, X-Merc. Protoletum says, took me over 3 hours on first night to get a group that could kill first boss. Magarat says, one village has 20 people, all of the people are of different races, ha 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 ha. Grand Boo says, cheater. Grand Boo says, guy drinks pot mid duel foul. Mundingor07 says, X-Hive DPS. Grand Boo says, L. Ligatistum says, can anyone help me with Toymaker real fast? Shadicus Maximus says, X-Merc. Diabolical says, don't question it, chud. Just consume EE. R3D says, LF1 tank or DPS rune forge. Mergtown says, X-Hive DPS. Outsider World says, no doing this. Griphigh says, LF tank or DPS winter rune forge. Shadicus Maximus says, X-Merc and my cute bleep. Fat Joseph says, got turkey dinners on deck. Templar 1 says, shame, I like this game. Grand Boo says, 2v1. Grand Boo says, Kai. R3D says, LF1 tank or DPS Rune Forge. Magarat says, game's nice but at least the devs have kinda stopped the wokery and chat isn't moderated. Anvil says, LFG Odo flail / vanish. Lady Muffins says, what faction should I join if I'm sort of stupid but fun to be around? I also say random things, I need hints. John Snoke says, XDPS Hive. Habiti says, chat isn't moderated. So you mean I can say a slur right now and nothing will happen to me? R3D says, LF1 tank or DPS Rune Forge. Muffin Stomper says, purple. Brook High says, LF tank or DPS Winter Rune Forge. Jumping Lily says, I love how unbelievably easy they made nuts to miss. Mamoru says, hell yeah brother. Squeaky L Toy says, one way to find out. Habiti says, GL me. Magarat says, auto censorship isn't moderation lol. Jumping Lily says, you can barely see them. Habiti says, and I. Lady Muffins says, purple is for dumb people. Templar 1 says, should we do an end tower? Habiti says, yeah. Habiti says, let's do it. Habiti says, teamwork makes the dream work. Dante Arcane says, factions don't really matter, just gear cosmetics. Ligatistum says, can anyone help with Toymaker real fast? Habiti says, FFS. Habiti says, ill do I. Baby Gravy Johnson says, kiss kiss. Habiti says, go again. Razzle says, tie. Templar 1 says, G. Habiti says, G. Baby Gravy Johnson says, kiss kiss. Magarat says, das right. Templar 1 says, das right asterisk. Lady Muffins says, to down for yellow. Xander says, DPS LFG depths. Noble Duelist says, live on Twitch at Noble Duelist TTV. 4K hour player, if you have any questions or want to hang out come by. Sinafu says, a data equals 0 sin / a. Halls Zeris says, XDPS Hive. Magarat says, do arena crates drop artifacts? Magarat says, a data equals 0, Koya's knee guards / a data equals 1, tumbler fee traps / a oper crates. John Snoke says, XDPS Hive. Cryptdog says, is a lot more players in the new servers? Magarat says, it's gonna die soon G. Magarat says, just enjoy, don't ask for numbers. Cryptdog says, shut up please. Imaloy says, Merc Portal 4 is up. Cryptdog says, asking for numbers isn't bad. Halls Zeris says, XDPS Hive. The Shave says, can always check the server site that shows pop. Meldon says, tell the Tati FBI equals. Ace Pringle says, how do you make a campsite again? Casey says, oh lord, not getting stuck after using the fast travel. The Shave says, forgot the name but it's there. Magarat says, Cryptdog on copium. Lazelo says, why? Mamoru says, I can confirm at least 5 people online RN. Habiti says, false. Rhodesimus says, makes no sense to start over this game. Cryptdog says, nah, just want people to PvP. Mega Slothy says, bleep. ELX Pellin says, so New World is cross-play now? Von Hellsmith says, WTF? Javier Chadimus says, a data equals 0, hardened crystal, / a drop from Cutlass small crate. Fat Joseph says, just came back after a year. Habiti says, would you just send her email in chat? Turd Snurgler says, bleep. The Shave says, PvP Island Crit Dog, tank for muskets BTW. Magarat says, PvP how? Lol PvP's dead. Anvil says, LFG Odo flail / vanish. John Snoke says, XDPS hive. Fat Joseph says, Xbox and PS5 players here now. Anita BJ says, we'll just need like 1 minute to fix weapon tree. Magarat says, yeah right. ProUse says, AI. The Shave says, a data equals 0, Odo, / A. The Shave says, a data equals 0, Odo, / A. H3MT Lord says, we can't upgrade artifact to 725. WTH. Halls Zeris says, XDPS hive. Anvil says, LFG Odo flail / vanish. Shadicus Maximus says, it's bugged. Quorum says, any crafters out there willing to do a combine / Delna V. Elon says, anyone know why the ground textures keep disappearing? Is this a known bug? Murky says, is there any point in the blue-winged Serpy? A data equals 0, blue-winged Serpy / A. Olivia says, H3MT Lord says, damn this game never disappoint. Ronaldo Capulet says, anybody else having to wait while the game loads textures? Koloskia says, no. H3MT Lord says, no. Von Hellsmith says, no. Do you have the game on a HDD? Strikers C says, no. Ligatistum says, anyone able to help with Toy Maker? Vanity F says, gotta have that SSD. Delna V. Elon says, ground textures for me are transparent. Installed on an SSD. H3MT Lord says, put the game in SSD. Squeaky L Toy says, not since I dedicated my life to Jesus. Teamy Bogway says, X Toy Maker. ILEXMG says, XDPS hive. Squeaky L Toy says, amen. Von Hellsmith says, might be why if you don't have an SSD Ronaldo. H3MT Lord says, amen. Templar 1 says, glory be. Halls Zeris says, XDPS hive. Vanity F says, must be the game then. Tuft says, how can we join raids? Ronaldo Capulet says, okay. I can switch it over to SSD. Looks like all the textures are loading in now though. H3MT Lord says, yes, the game is really good ha. Baby Gravy Johnson says, I have no idea what to do anymore lol. Von Hellsmith says, might be for the best cause the game can have a lot of stuff going in dungeons / raids. Dakarii says, what gear score for the hive? 700. Squeaky L Toy says, and the Lord did say, bathe not in the font of wickedness that is OPR but walk in the light of invasions. Praise Jake. Weekend Mage says, Winter Forge plus DPS. Habiti says, guys, what's the most pleasurable thing in life? Morse Tangier says, Hive is Tay gateway to 725, hence the singular focus on getting a raid invite these days. Sinafu says, bleep. Von Hellsmith says, lol. Baby Gravy Johnson says, where is Hive? Habiti says, I think you spelled it wrong. I'm Aloy says, Merc portal is done, open up your major chase. Jumping Lily says, why are nuts so hard to find? Halls Zeris says, XDPS Hive. IliuxMG says, XDPS Hive. Von Hellsmith says, they're not. Jumping Lily says, they made them so small. Koloskia says, what's the best mount skin? Habiti says, I got some for you right here, Lily. Von Hellsmith says, there's a ton of them in forests. Alpinator says, evening all. 35 minutes till pulls for RS invasion and we still need 30 sign-ups. Come get your easy gold, Azith, Rep and Dark Matter, plus get a shot at 5k when we win and if you are in the Discord. Habiti says, 2 nuts. Jumping Lily says, yay no. Weekend Mage says, Hive is a pain in the butt with random zags thing, everyone has a guild of player that use Discord. Habiti says, WTFY. Alpinator says, evening all. 25 minutes till pulls for RS invasion and we still need 30 sign-ups. Come get your easy gold, Azith, Rep and Dark Matter, plus get a shot at 5k when we win and if you are in the Discord. Von Hellsmith says, not sure where you're looting the nuts at but there's a lot in the forests near Monarch. Jumping Lily says, that's where I am. R3D says, LF1 tank or DPS Rune Forge. Jumping Lily says, these are just annoying to farm. I've got dad skills says, can you not upgrade champion gear at the Gypsine Kiln anymore? Tivm. Avianite Knight says, X up for Zygoramets, I need to kill if for a data equals 0, Power Stone, /A. R3D says, LF1 tank or 2 DPS Rune Forge. Von Hellsmith says, why farm nuts anyways? Ulvling cooking. Player 1 Hunter says, Oper. Shan Riven says, LF2 Spear 4 Hive. Player 1 Hunter says, Oper. Jumping Lily says, yeah. Pig Cookies says, Oral Cabrans. Delna V. Elon says, the ground textures were transparent unless I set them to high instead of very high. Weird. Shan Riven says, LF2 Spear 4 Hive. Von Hellsmith says, if you want something to help you locate the nut spawns, try typing New World Map into Google. There's a few maps that can track resources equals. Alexandria says, X-Hive DPS. Von Hellsmith says, tracks a ton of other stuff too. Halls Zeris says, XDPS Hive. Jumping Lily says, Tie. Avianite Knight says, X up for Zygoramets, I need to kill it for Power Stone. Oberia says, does Fire Ward Gem help reduce fire dots also? Noodles TTV says, here is my official petition to restore the old glory of Borsham. Haas signing it with me. Extraspisameo says, WT. Pig Cookies says, XWT. Halls Zeris says, Brassel. Big Salad says, why do I have infinite consumables on this server? Dad Tight says, need DPS for Hive. Avianite Knight says, X up for Zygoramets, I need to kill it for Power Stone, we need a healer. Oberia says, but it'll take some. Little Rat Goblin says, X-Zig. Jumping Lily says, what making money RN in this server? Finelli says, OnlyFans. Big Salad says, they all sat infinite like him in an arena. Jumping Lily says, what's? Alpinator says, has anyone bought an Apex Gold cursed anything from Thule of Fortune yet? Little Rat Goblin says, X-Zig. Alpinator says, has anyone bought an Apex Gold cursed anything from Thule of Fortune yet? Dabtight says, need 1 DPS for Hive. Von Hellsmith says, not yet, those chests cost 1.8k each x. Pig Cookies says, I need to upgrade this fail, even though I don't use flails. Shadicus Maximus says, yeah, it was Dogbulb. Vita Milk Tia says, X-Hive DPS. Von Hellsmith says, I got a gold cursed coconut and 1k doubloons ATM. Warrior Mag needs to be revived. Player 1 Hunter says, Pig. Von Hellsmith says, didn't feel like farming more. Oberia says, Arcane or Void DMG used more in PvP. Player 1 Hunter says, you rather upgrade the weapon that you use. Player 1 Hunter says, save the materials. Sixikin says, what weapons use lifesteal in their skill trees? Bad Sheep Crazy says, flail and hatchet. Alpinator says, just wondering if it gave you a 725 item based on what gear set you were in, or if it gave you one of the 3 it says it can give you randomly. High Knight says, anyone down for Isle of Zur to farm rapier? Sixikin says, so what if I use them both in PvP, is that bad? Gaprio says, TF happened to S. Gaprio says, looks way different. Mafia says, is salvaging the best thing to do with weapons and armor that you don't want? Or is there something better to do with them? The Shave says, both can use STR, so should be fine. Sixikin. Player 1 Hunter says, OPARRR. Sixikin says, interesting, you'll do it. Player 1 Hunter says, OPARRR. Alpinator says, evening all. 10 minutes till pulls for RS invasion and we still need 20 sign-ups. Come get your easy gold, Azith, Rep and Dark Matter, plus get a shot at 5k when we win and if you are in the Discord. IAM Chimkin says, what is an adornment cart? Alpinator says, evening all. 10 minutes till pulls for RS invasion and we still need 20 sign-ups. Come get your easy gold, Azith, Rep and Dark Matter, plus get a shot at 5k when we win and if you are in the Discord. Alexandria says, X-Hive DPS. Lasroth Wolfbane says, X-Hive DPS. FF7 Reject says, FF7 Reject gives the thumbs up. Jurak says, THC. Onimbus says, wish all storage was one and not spread out like my mom's legs. Jurak says, THX. Bullameyer says, what's her? The Shave says, let me talk to you Mutta. Navugo Dono says, you, first time lodging in after years, sup, what to do? Start over? Noble Duelist says, any good tanks want to join Hive? New Tech Guy says, 7 mins for Expo. Noob Tech Guy says, still waiting. Seifer says, which named spear is best for PvE tanks? Laffy Taffy says, X-Hive DPS ranged. Noob Tech Guy says, you can probably find a 3v3. Halls Zeris says, X DPS Hive. The Shave says, with Scorpion, I hear bosses come to you when you use it. Beelzebub says, did they nerf? Halls Zeris says, X DPS Mage. Seifer says, I don't think old boss gets pulled by it lol. White Privilege says, can someone help me please? I'm Aloy says, help what's wrong? Seifer says, small ones I suppose. The Shave says, 911, what's your emergency? Andrioff says, tank and healer, Hive 2 boss. Korozok says, X-Hive DPS ranged full trophy. White Privilege says, I'm trying to cast a spell called Segregation but it's not working. Sam Paolo says. Templar 1 says, Gov George Wallace, is that you? The Quagmire says, too low level to be effective. White Privilege says, oh what level? The Quagmire says, 69 and above. Andrioff says, need a tank and healer. 2 boss Hive. Binchbunch says, Raven Grim I see you. White Privilege says, also cleansing woman's suffrage isn't working. Mega Slothy says, tank.
Greetings, traveler.
The God Gain Z says, we're gonna need more than that now lol.
Burn within your heart.
The Covenant faction has thrown Cutlass Keys into a conflict state. They can now declare war. White Privilege says, Tivm.
But when the
Ligatistum says, can you not enter a dungeon solo? Y3 Redua says, X heals.
The withered are
The
too
God Gain Z says, LF2 heals 2 tanks 1 DPS.
shaken to go back.
Rody Simus says, apparently they didn't do a good job to stop Bleep from grouping in the FA zone.
You must convince him.
Von Hellsmith says, most require a party of 3 people to enter. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad sits. Ligatistum says, that's Bleep. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad sits.
Only to have it
Robinhood 2710 says, a data equals 0, Frost of the North, /A.
on the clothes we wore when we
Von Hellsmith says, it makes sense for some of them if you've done them.
young Florina.
Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad sits.
Save your breath.
Rody Simus says, should have made it if not hitting someone within 25 meters then you start taking damage. Sig Ripper says, need 2 DPS for Amreen in GF.
Safe enough right here until
The God Gain Z says, LF2 heals 2 tanks 2 DPS high, on Typhon. Moonlight Squid says, bro help PLZ. Von Hellsmith says, that would be dumber. Dango4 says, X Tank Hive. Akiro says, cringe. Ligatistum says, anyone for a quick depths run? I need Thorpe for the artifact. Swiftper says, X DPS Hive. Amizel says, hahaha I had you mo Timmy lucky that guy came. Sig Ripper says, 2 DPS needed for Amreen in Group Finder. Ma says, make it where if the game does something to make you feel bad it uninstalls the game for other people until you feel better. Sibab always says, X-Hive healer. Dank Ferric says, someday they'll fix, basic mount vittles. Pinelli says, how does one feed better? Over Easy says, how do you find gems? Akiro says, Didistinal is a hard name. Von Hellsmith says, mining mostly. 8 and 3 says. Alpinator says, evening wool. 5 minutes till pulls for RS invasion and we still need 20 sign-ups. Come get your easy gold, Azith, Rep and Dark Matter, plus get a shot at 5k when we win and if you are in the Discord. Alpinator says, evening wool. 5 minutes till pulls for RS invasion and we still need 20 sign-ups. Come get your easy gold, Azith, Rep and Dark Matter, plus get a shot at 5k when we win and if you are in the Discord. I'm Aloy says, you can buy gems on TP or just mining some ores. Over Easy says, mining anything specific. Or just anything. Terminator I says, X-Hive. White Privilege says, someday they'll fix these race traders. Von Hellsmith says, just ores. I'm Aloy says, you can buy gems on TP or just mining some ores. Amizel says, RS invasion. Oscar Platinum says, WTS a data equals 0, Golden Scarab, / a X40 a data equals 1, Glowing Sap, / a X16 a data equals 2, Ancient Glob of Ectoplasm, / a X260 a data equals 3, Hardened Crystal, / a X3 a data equals 4, Ephemeral Seal, / a X1. Sig Ripper says, need 1 DPS, low level preferred in Group Finder. Von Hellsmith says, higher tier ores will yield better quality gems also you can rarely get gems in chests too. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad sits. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad sits. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad sits. Lady Muffins says, wait I have to do all factions starting quests before I pick one. Von Hellsmith says, you can if you want. Rogue Traveler says, anyone else keep getting connection issues? Drabird says, anyone farming sin? Asteroid Crested says, anyone doing the raid? Von Hellsmith says, they let you do them all before deciding on your faction. The God Gain Z says, LF1 tank 1 heals Hive second boss. Andrioff says, LF1 tank 1 healer. Seifer says, 700 GS healer, in for Hive. White Privilege says, they shouldn't allow them in our schools. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad sits. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad sits. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad sits. Anvil says, LFG Odo Flail / Vanish. Sibab always says, LFM DPS healer Hive second boss. Ligatistum says, anyone for a quick depths run? Lobby is up. Moonlight Squid says, Tai.
Oi, you're not...
Ligatistum says, LFM's quick depth run.
Look at what you bring.
Anvil says, I need some assistance killing Vanish for Odo Flail.
Sustenance into the settlement.
Frey Haldor says, XDPS Hive.
The noble
Fabe says, hi.
The Publius, Sharma and
NT Merches says, can someone sell me bags?
Plenty to spare.
Munchkin Doom says, anyone wanna do a quick Armeni run?
The better.
Daddy 8 says, Maz you on this server?
In fact,
Kutcha Sparrow says, I can. Vagadorn says, I will. Xanax 2 milligrams says, yes. Toy Riddle says, I gift you the bag dude. Moxus Spelldance says, yeah lol. Frictabtite says, need healer for Hive. Pinelli says, LFG Hive. Daddy 8 says, Q with me quick bleep around. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad has reached font color equals, at 63E, level 19/font. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad sits. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad sits. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad sits. Moxus Spelldance says, invite Ha. NT Merches says, okay where to meet. Toy Riddle says, tell me where.
So you made it out
White
of the
Privilege says, why isn't this game segregated?
I suppose you reclaimed the Olcott's keepsakes as
Tot 69 says, game dead.
I am ashamed.
Akiro says,
You kept
ya
the faith
mama.
and came through where I failed.
Ligatistum says, need one more for depths please. Asteroid Crested says, LFG Hive.
The Covenant is an order
Amizel
of
says,
Templars
lol
sworn
here
to
comes the
battle on
idiots.
Aeternum to keep the spark of hope alive
Grand Boo says, in
for
depths.
eternity. From what I've witnessed,
Silent Samurai 01 says, I can heal for depths. Toy Riddle says, im in Everfall. Anvil says, LF help with Vanish.
I strongly recommend that
Song
you
Off
visit
Retribution
Dr.
says,
House.
Invasion has 3 spots open still.
Inspiring about the place. Oh, in fact,
NT Merches says, im in Primrose near Iron Shrine.
you could take a message to my brother there.
Burp Turkey says, I vote Turkey only fountains.
For my welfare, so please reassure me.
Ligatistum says, anyone else?
I
Depths.
committed to helping the people here in Oxborough for
Andrioff
harm
says,
and
LF tank for Hive. Second boss. The God Gain Z says, Hive LF 1 tank 1 DPS, second boss. Frey Haldor says, X Hive DPS. Jack Green says, X Deeps DPS. Im Shifu says, Inv me. Dimak Tanaka says, my character is stuck how to reset. Toy Riddle says, come to Everfall dude. I'm Aloy says, unstuck. Grand Knight Spike says, Grand Knight Spike has reached font color equals, at 63E, level 19/font. Tot 69 says, setting unstuck. NT Merches says, okay on my way. Jebug says, a data equals, 0, as if water, slash a data equals, 1, hyssop, slash a WTS bulk. Archlord Rinks says, escape settings unstuck. The Quagmire says, what's the invasion Discord for RS? Dimak Tanaka says, unable to teleport to unstuck location. The God Gain Z says, Hive LF 1 tank second boss. X Ghosts Wolf says, thanks. John Michael says, John Michael sits. I'm Aloy says, recall to in bud. Dimak Tanaka says, god damn.
Please, good visitor.
Fernam Aurelin says, no mic at the moment. Mag 5 says, Mag 5 Yuga Apidra, Papalo Tijara.
Now there, Templar dummy.
Pinelli says, LFG Hives DPS. Andrioff says, LF 1 tank Hive second boss. Rogue Traveler says, I don't have a fishing rod TF. Yaffa says, L. Yaffa says, D6. HV24 says, damn. HV24 says, lol. I'm Aloy says, equip it bud. NT Merches says, here dude. Noble Duelist says, need 1 tank and 1 DPS for Hive. Lord Belarus V says, how do I play instruments on PC? Toy Riddle says, where you are. The Shave says, 5 francs I think. I'm Aloy says, press 5 francs. Munchkin Doom says, when your toddler turns off your comp. Amizel says, Lord Bell F. I'm Aloy says, 3 francs for fishing. Munchkin Doom says, pain. Erica 46 says, a data equals 0, summons letter, /a. NT Merches says, by the telly. LV Black Rob says, 3 francs for your mom. Beelzebub says, is it me or did they nerf lasting consumption? Frey Haldor says, X-Hive DPS. White Privilege says, cast segregation. Pre-Nut says, your mom got nerfed on her consumption of dick. Andrioff says, LF1 tank hive second boss. White Privilege says, casts racial purity. Toy Riddle says, dude can't trade it, sorry. Im Shifu says, is the expansion worth buying?
Hello?
White Privilege says, casts cleanse women's suffrage.
Was yours that new
Toy Riddle says, I did know.
I apologize. Yes, please.
NT Merches says, okay typo. The Savage Khan says, whoa, look at that magic.
Just
Proto-Ledum says, LF tank and DPS high.
join the seekers. Us!
Toy Riddle
Oh,
says,
that's
sorry.
grand then. And a relief.
MMO Timmy says, at pre-nut it's called a feeding tube.
About the types of fishes we are looking
Vita Milk Tia says, X-Hive DPS.
I guess that
White Privilege says, things need to go back to the good old days.
is
NT Merches says, all good. The Savage Khan says, lol. Proto-Ledum says, LF tank and heals hive. White Privilege says, casts facism. Bucko 5 says, how do you move UI elements? I'm on Ultravid and the chat is taking up like 25% of my screen and almost in the middle. Delna V. Elon says, it how I made it to 60 back in the day. All my gear is level 45. Bucko 5 says, the quest log is literally half of my screen, WTF lol. Pre-Nut says, at MMO Timmy that makes sense lol. Fernum Aurelin says, no. I've got dad skills says, hit the gear, bucko. Fernum Aurelin says, PvP flag. Proto-Ledum says, LF tank X hive. Bucko 5 says, yeah I can't find it in settings anywhere. Hercules says, anyone want to do the depths, my group is stuck on the boss with the beams. Oh I'm Edo says, mono orb LF2. Pinelli says, LFG hive DPS. I've got dad skills says, there's a gear inside the chat window. It can't do much, but at least it can make the text smaller, so that's something, huh? Jolly Penno Popper says, X Herc invite. Terminator I says, X Hive. Fenroast says, X DPS Hive range FS. Jebug says, a data equals 0, as if water, / a data equals 1. Hyssop, / a WTS bulk. Oh I'm Edo says, need 2 DPS for mono orb. White Privilege says, casts use your own water fountain. Proto-Ledum says, LF tank X hive. Frey Haldor says, LFG hive DPS range and melee. Ricandithus says, did they remove repairing? I'm Aloy says, yes no health bar for items. Daddy 8 says, Q arenas get your bleep pushed in. Ricandithus says, nice. I've got dad skills says, oh dude. That was stupid. Grand Knight Spike needs to be revived. Big Womper says, GGS. Daddy 8 says, stop searching for 725 gear, you will still get your bleep pushed in arenas. Proto-Ledum says, LF tank X hive. Oh, I'm Edo says, need 1 DPS for mono orb. Hazardous Boost says, what's a good bow to run? Hazardous Boost says, I'm only LVL 45 so ibk. Strikers Z says, where do you get the key for the new PvP zone chests? Bucko 5 says, God, this UI is atrocious on Ultravid. Sibab always says, LFM Hive second boss. Colper says, X mono. Templar 1 says, you guys wanna go play Chiv 2? Protoletum says, LF tank and DPS X Hive. I've got dad skills says, agreed. Anvil says, TBH it became mobile phone UI. Dead off Dread says, X Hive DPS. Bucko 5 says, it's just all too big, the default font size is 28. Marilito says, X Hive healer. Vita Milk Tia says, X Hive DPS. KLU7 Chet says, can we go out and back in? Jack Yurtadov says, LFG Amreen. Sinafu says, LF4 more for Hive of Gorgon. Cryptdog says, Ayo. Oambea says, dude. Hazardous Boost says, adjust your font size lol helps a little. Glowing Battleborn says, over here she is glitching in the wall. Andrioff says, LF tank for second boss Hive. Fast travel. Would you like to fast travel to this location? Press circle for no, press square for yes. Loading. Please wait. Bucko 5 says, sadly can only change it for chat, the quest log is just gonna take up half my screen lol. Wolf says, X Hive. Frey Haldor says, X Hive DPS. Amizel says, Aldine over here using a glitch. Oambea says, sad. Dr. Elazar says, a data equals 0, blessed rivets, / a WTSX6. Halls Zeris says, X DPS Hive. Sinafu says, LF4 more Hive. Nup says, can you queue for Hive of Gorgons or do you need to create a raid? Newbie Endgamer. Alexandria says, X Hive range DPS. Halls Zeris says, X DPS Hive. Thanks for Speed says, so do we have to make a fresh start character then or? Jarqualis says, LF1 healer and DPS for Winter Rune Forge, upgraded 725 chance drops. Terminator III says, X Hive. Laffy Taffy says, X Winter DPS. Andrioff says, LF tank second boss Hive. Laffy Taffy says, a data equals 0, dark leather adventurer satchel / a WTS. Pinelli says, LF tank or healer second boss Hive.
20.
Dr. Elazar says, a data equals 0, golden scarab / a WTS X22.
Are you trying to bring the
Pants says, X Hive DPS.
A man has to make
Halls Zeris says, X DPS Mage Hive.
You can see for yourself.
Jarqualis says, LF1 healer for Winter Rune Forge, upgraded 725 chance drops. One Kid says, fuck you. Pandora 15 says, X healer Winter. Fast travel. Would you like to fast travel to this location? Press circle for no, press square for yes. Loading. Please wait. Sigurd Loveless says, max level now 65 still. Over Easy says, 120. I'm Aloy says, still 65. Alexandria says, X-Hive range DPS. Ogan says, is there any research for furnishing recipes? Daddy8 says, Q arenas with your new 725 gear and get bleep. Pants says, X-Hive DPS. Darman Darren says, huge bolts. Terminator III says, X-Hive DPS. Sigurd Loveless says, X-Hive tank / DPS. Korozok says, X-Hive DPS mage full trophy. Amizel says, Aldine over here using a glitch to cap a place, using an emote to hide in a stone. Blungus Gunker says, someone do a backflip for me 3. Hugo Slong says, any WT running? Daddy8 says, Q arenas with your 725 gear. Jack Green says, that's funny AF get bleep. Pyrie says, anyone up to run Amreen? X up. Kutcha Sparrow says, I am. Jack Green says, isn't that the 25 dumb? Pants says, X-Hive DPS. The Shave says, drop a fat stanky on their chest for me pappy. Jeremiah says, yes. Thanks for Speed says, did y'all fresh start? Jack Green says, yes. Awakened GH0ST says, everyone K up for 3v3s. The Carry, Sam says, X-Hive. Thanks for Speed says, do you need to for new content? Dante Arcane says, nope, kinda why we are here lol. Celine Hayes says, Imnu. Dante Arcane says, nah. Daddy8 says, please everyone don't queue arenas, only queue if you feel tough with 725 gear. Pyrie says, X Amreen. Horizon Sent says, Imnu 2. Bentley Adams says, anyone doing M1 Empyrean Forge? Colper says, I would after I empty bags. Pyrie says, X up Amreen. War 00105 says, Daddy8 you get carried by Mars trash. Daddy8 says, you can queue with when you are ready. Daddy 8 says, otherwise bleep.
Please, good visitor, tell me, have you come from Oxborough? My dear sister Florina embarked on a quest there some time ago, and I am anxious to hear word of her welfare.
War 00105 says, just did we lost to Mars, he is insane, you're barely mid.
Watch new initiates face
Kutcha Sparrow says, all good.
but when it's one's
Midna Elise says, TF my K just get cancelled for.
if you have come with hopeful dreams of
System
enlisting
going
in the
down
Covenant
says,
itself,
tie.
it's only fair you know what you're getting into. A wraith stalks the lands, and some initiates gave in to fear, and are now in even greater peril.
Midna Elise says, and now I can't join 3v3. Daddy 8 says, Q arenas for mid-fights.
This very likely led them to a dark fate, though it is neither surprising nor unjust. It appears that in their mad flight, they sought refuge in Clearview Crypt, which has now become disturbingly quiet.
Damon says, I will when I get to 65. Shadow Weaver says, lol, hotfix.
Now there's courage! I should warn you, however, Lumen Morales believes the initiates engaged in heretical
Idman username says, 65.
went after them. But
Idman username says, how long ago was that?
so go then, newcomer. I have a good feeling.
Damon says, you tell me. The bridge man says, I'm stuck. WLLD Mongrel says, where is Mount Quest? I'm Aloy says, top of Everfall. WLLD Mongrel says, tie. Shadow Weaver says, it happened at 6 a.m. EST. War 00105 says, that's better. WLLD Mongrel says, I'm LVL 20, but I don't see anything. WLLD Mongrel says, do I need expansion? Midna Elise says, anyone else getting failed to join K try again later? Travis Paul says, ex annoyed Aguasha. Daddy 8 says, 725 gear Q arenas. System going down says, GG. El Asesino Tano says, hey. Dask World says, thanks. Senpin Yuzui says, anyone got LVL 45 jewelry for sale, prefer STR. Midna Elise says, oh that's bleep stupid, why do that? El Asesino Tano says, hey. Midna Elise says, I was enjoying those arenas. LV Black Rob says, who wanted jewelry? El Asesino Tano says, STR Dex build. El Asesino Tano says, okay cool. Jeremiah says, anyone else keep seeing the water under the ground? Senpen Yuzui says, Mianye. El Asesino Tano says, I just got back into it. IliaxMG says, X-Hive DPS. El Asesino Tano says, checking out the changes. El Asesino Tano says, tie. Eric Valhalla says, when is the Halloween costume contest? Kirknos says, anybody have a normal rushing leather hat I could buy? I just want it for the transmog. Anvil says, can't buy OPR gear. Eric Valhalla says, but you can craft replica gear. Emporo says, I can't restart. Kirknos says, oh okay sorry, then how can I get it? Emporo says, is it worth keeping old character? Aldenki says, wave. Emporo says, or bullying noobs on fresh start. Flacia Penetranti says, X-Hive range DPS experience in first boss. Grim Oakenshield says, nope need to earn it in combat. Pauls Zeris says, X-Hive DPS mage. Delna V. Elon says, don't bully me BB. Snopdoob says, a data equals 0, sliver of consecrated iron, / a WTSPM offer. Venomog says, a data equals 0, dead eye of the dryad, / a. Frey Haldor says, a data equals 0, as if conductors, / a. Emporo says, it's just all you Psalm nerds I played in 2021 with. Emporo says, where the Timmies to bully. Tannery downgraded in Restless Shore. Loom downgraded in Restless Shore. Smelter downgraded in Restless Shore. Onimbus says, RIP. Emporo says, Restless Shore can't even win a invasion. Jebug says, a data equals 0, hyssop, / a data equals 1, as if water, / a WTS bulk. Emporo says, it'll help you invite me to your bleep. Emporo says, guild. Travis Paul says, Exanoida Guasha. Servilome says, evening folks. Frey Haldor says, X-Hive DPS knows mechanics. Cracker 102 says, Key Company is recruiting all active players. DM me if interested in a laid-back company. PVX Discord not required. Cove. Post Severance says, good attempt RS invasion. Mint Boy says, that was tough. Maxinant says, looking for company. The Quagmire says, now I remember how I hated rolling tank in Invasions lol. Post Severance says, yeah left got hammers real quick right at skull phase. Squeaky L Toy says, good effort. ILEXMG says, X-Hive DPS. Agwenabana says, a data equals 0, Rifle of Sinister Deeds, /A. Flacia Penetranti says, X-Hive DPS. Halls Zeris says, X-Hive DPS Mage. Lodak Rap says, sup dubs I'm on Disord. Protoletum says, X-Hive heal /DPS. LV Black Rob says, why game make me do level 10 quests again? Venomog says, a data equals 0, Deadeye of the Dryad, /A. Fartboy says, cause you suck. Korozok says, X-Hive DPS Mage full trophy. WLLD Mongrel says, how to move crosshair up. LV Black Rob says, I will destroy your father's bussy. Sistakacha says, a data equals 0, invasion blunderbuss of the soldier, /a WTS. Sistakacha says, WTS. Sistakacha says, WTS. ILEXMG says, X-Hive DPS. CryptDog says, I think he wants to sell. Grizzly Frizzly says, Amreen run. Captain N.V.D says, LF2M regular Lazarus.
Thank you for giving me this chance. I'm serious. I must ask. No, the fallen and made him to...
Eric Valhalla says, drip check. Raven Stoll says, hola. Sarai says, leave my flag boy. Captain N.V.D says, LF1M DPS regular Lazarus. Grizzly Frizzly says, LFG Amreen. Hugo Slong says, any WT running? Archlord Rinks says, healer LF anything. Nahima says, did someone has usefully upgraded a data equals 0, the butcher, / a to 725? I have all the required mads a data equals 1, gold cursed coconut, / a data equals 2, chromatic seal, / a data equals 3, weapon matrix, / a data equals 4, dark matter, / a data equals 5, gypsum orb, / a it is not let me upgrade. Moxus Spelldance says, artifact operating is disabled. Emporo says, what's the max gear score? Emporo says, can we craft 750 or whatever? Cracker 102 says, nope. Archlord Rinks says, 725. Nahima says, ah. Okay thanks. Emporo says, we can craft 725. Cracker 102 says, nope. Mr. Haas says, a data equals 0, magnificent dress, / a. Daddy 8 says, con. Kenji Ellis says, bruh there's so many tents over here in Grenwood. Emporo says, WTF is Grenwood. Kenji Ellis says, Grenville MB. Surveillance says, wait 725 is the max now? Javier Chadimas says, 725 upgrades are disabled or unbugged. Emporo says, I see. Richter says, does anyone know if crafting Tier 3 maple stain fulfills the furnishing task / journey requirement? Emporo says, so we will be able to craft 725 right? Surveillance says, Su 700 still max? Emporo says, in max 250 everything. Flat Earth Mommy says, 725 I believe. Doc MC Chubbs says, A. Pocket Jacks says, D. Imaloy says, a data equals 0, engineer pants, / a data equals 1, engineer hat, / a WTS PMO. Emporo says, fuck why did they remove all my weapon perks I don't remember this bleep. Raven Grim says, lol. Tanis67 says, good chance to do it better this time. Malice says, luckily for me I had pictures of all my stuff. ILEXMG says, X-Hive DPS. CryptDog says, some trees are not the same. Whitebox WB says, anyone dance of the fireflies. Roast Mary says, X-Hive DPS. Pre-Nut says, your mom's not the same, she changed. Fast travel. Would you like to fast travel to this location? Press circle for no, press square for yes. Morse Tangier says, xwhite.me, exclamation mark. Loading. Please wait. Javier Chadimus says, a data equals 0, Reveler Shoes of the Barbarian, / a WTS. Daybeezy says, I'm full up sorry. Whitebox WB says, Dance of the Fireflies February 5th.
Templar Damiano is proven by his safe return, though it is your courage that saved him. It sounds like justice was served with the initiates, so they embraced.
Darmok Ortega says, anyone running Life Ring?
Then I can only hope.
Noble Duelist says, need 1 DPS for Hive.
I will gather any of the initiates.
Morse Tangier says, X dance.
She can seem strange.
Archlord Rinks says, what's fireflies?
Members of the order. She
Protoletum says, X-Hive DPSFS.
to give great consideration to her
Grand Knight Spike says, Grand Knight Spike sits.
presence of those initiates from
Awakened GH0ST says, whoops. CryptDog says, NUM. Javier Chadimus says, a data equals 0, winged leather shoes, / a from fireflies. Lizia says, Lizia makes a gesture of appreciation. Kenji Ellis says, I have a quest marker that says, talk to Gideon, but there's no one where the marker is. CryptDog says, Cheeseburger. CryptDog says, NUM.
You are under
Emporo says, so where the No Man's Land gang plays.
provided us with a strong case.
Emporo says, where my green bros out help an old maxed out player re.
If you can help me with
Bentley Adams says, need 2 more for Empyrean Forge. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad sits.
the problem
Bentley Adams says, N1.
related to Templar Titus in
Grand Knight Spike says, Grand Knight Spike sits.
our fallen initiates. I'm afraid this is
Call me Daddy 420 says, DPS here looking for Hive.
paranoia and rage.
Nelsonen says, Chaos Carnival is looking for adventurers ready to dive into New World's toughest content. PvP, PvE and a great community of mature players. Join us in Discord and be a part of something bigger.
It should lure him out.
Armin Zero says, X-Hive DPS.
Bring back the
Tanis67 says, green. Lizia says, Lizia makes a gesture of appreciation. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad dances. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad dances. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad sits. 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 Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad dances. Grand Knight Spike says, Grand Knight Spike dances. Laffy Taffy says, a data equals 0, dark leather adventurer satchel, / a WTS. Grand Knight Spike says, Grand Knight Spike dances. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad waves. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad gives the thumbs up. Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad dances. Call me Daddy 420 says, X-Hive DPS here, done it before. Kenji Ellis says, what do I do if the NPC I need to return my quest to is missing? Emporo says, where is the new PvP zone? Atomation says, need one more for Runeforge. Tanis67 says, Cutlass. The God Gain Z says, hi the tank. Janed says, I reported it as a bug yesterday, Kenji. Fingers crossed the devs fixed it ASAP. Mustachio Mage says, sign out and in. Ovaria says, Tether Musket is completely cracked. Emporo says, Cutlass is cursed mist. Rascolic says, are all the Dublounds gear PvP based? Bentley Adams says, need one heals for N1 Empyrean Forge. Travis Paul says, is anyone gonna kill Anoid Aguasha these dang apes? Travis Paul says, is anyone gonna kill Anoid Aguasha these dang apes? Mustachio Mage says, new PvP bottom left map. Tanis67 says, the bluish area in Cutlass Keys, bottom left. Onimbus says, Onimbus gives the thumbs up.
You have recovered the
Onimbus says, Onimbus sits.
Now, don't say a word.
Onimbus says, Onimbus shushes. Onimbus says, Onimbus makes a threatening motion. Onimbus says, Onimbus does a funny walk with a cane. Morse Tangier says, catch a world tour doing 2 Isle for the apes. Lizia says, Lizia makes a gesture of appreciation. Flacia Penetranti says, X-Hive DPS. Archlord Rinks says, are you farming Lifetaker?
Let us protect Aeternum together.
The God Gain Z says, Hive second boss LF tank.
Now we can safely say this whole sordid affair is concluded.
Vanitas says, X-Glob.
Lethal is a champion.
Vanitas says, X-Hive.
Quite.
Onimbus says, Onimbus gives the thumbs up.
As it is about
Onimbus says, Onimbus sits.
better for all of us that Lethal.
Onimbus says, Onimbus shushes. Onimbus says, Onimbus makes a threatening motion. Onimbus says, Onimbus does a funny walk with a cane. The God Gain Z says, you are able to invite bro.
Talking about what you've been doing around here.
Surveillance says, wait, can you not upgrade your 700 gear to 725?
You officially became one of
Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad dances.
The Covenant will shine
Noble
brighter
Duelist
with you
says,
standing in our
LF1 DPS.
Go and speak to Lumen Beza.
Mustachio Mage says, no.
For your worthiness.
Noble Duelist says, LF1 DPS for Hive. Bizarre Bibu says, yo. Surveillance says, seriously? Morse Tangier says, don't see the recipe until you have the item from Hive Run Serve. Quiet Pink says, XDPS
I
Hive.
know Florina would love to hear from
Your
you.
courage.
Mustachio Mage says, seriously?
To swear your allegiance to the covenant.
Vita Milk Tia says, XDPS Hive. Flacia Penetranti says, X Hive DPS. Mad Healed says, X Heals, Hive. Atomation says, need 1 for DPS Rune Forge. Ninkar Bank says, a data equals 0, Tumblr fee traps, /a. Surveillance says, okay, so you have to run the raid to get the recipe just to upgrade your gear.
Now that you have joined our righteous ranks,
Boozya says, any legal boys or die for some jello.
Aeternum, where our banner flies.
Mustachio Mage says, correct. The God Gain Z says, Hive LF tank second boss. Surveillance says, someone please fire these devs. Bentley Adams says, need tank /DPS for M1 Empyrean Forge. Charlie Grimm says, Hiya. Marina says, THX for the help. Join this faction? You will only be able to join a company with players of the same faction. If flagged for PvP, you will only be able to group up with players from the same faction. Before joining, you might want to double check the faction choices of your friends in New World, Aeternum. Your choice isn't permanent -- you can change your faction from the bio screen once. After that, you can change it again every font color equals, at 63E, 30 days /font. Press circle for no, press square for yes. Kingsalabagel0 says, how many tiers of houses are there? Ficius says, I believe 20k is the most expensive. Caldine says, 3. The God Gain Z says, Hive second boss LF1 DPS. ILEXMG says, X Hive DPS. Aldine Mavani says, 4. Kingsalabagel0 says, okay, I keep seeing the 20k but was not sure if they were the best lol. Dead Off Dread says, man, I still haven't gotten everything set back up from the reset. Dan4 says, LF2 DPS and healer for Empyrean Forge M1 check GF.
Now that you have joined our righteous rank, missions are always
Quiet
available
Pink
here.
says, X Hive
Anywhere on
DPS.
Aeternum, where our banner flies.
JCA Aonir says, A company in Syndicate has declared war on Brightwood. The final warring company will be determined in 10 meters. Utah John 1 says, X Hive heals. Surveillance says, X Hive ranged DPS. Ladagardi says, what is this rise of the angry earth? Jack Wet says, ground a bit upset. Silstiana says, mildly agitated world. Laffy Taffy says, X-Hive ranged DPS. Lizia says, I'm confused. I have been farming enemies that are only 2 or more levels higher than me, but I'm getting very little X. Can anyone explain why? Dan Go 4 says, LF1 DPS and healer for Empyrean M1. Crazy Apple 3 says, X DPS Forge. Fickius says, best exp is from quests, or do you mean weapon exp? Aldine Mavani says, because you get XP from quests not kills. Fickius says, X heals Forge. Lizia says, okay, thank you for that info. Yarb says, did they get rid of ammo? McToasty96 says, I pissed and shitted myself. Aron FFX says, very lil XP gain from monsters my friend, cause they are abundant and respawn quickly. Nomad 1524 says, yes, no ammo. Yarb says, so what happens to all the ammo I had crafted? Daddy 8 says, LOLQ arenas as content.
Now that you have joined our righteous ranks, you'll find we have ample opportunity for spreading the light.
Kenji Ellis says, if I create a new character, will that fix a bugged mission with an NPC on an MSQ?
I have Covenant gear as well.
Emporo says, lol. Kenji Ellis says, missing NPC I mean. Mustachio Mage says, sent to Cthulhu. Viriana Origin says, X-Hive DPS. Zyri says, anyone dueling anywhere? Thanks for Speed says, X-Hive DPS. Yarb says, so just bleep my resources. Dad. Daddy 8 says, Q arenas with your 725 gear, as win. Smoking Marijuan says, damn son. Vanitas says, X Glob DPS. Vanitas says, X Hive DPS. Aldine Mavani says, he's not wrong. The Quagmire says, your best bet is usually to wait for a server restart to clear any NPC bugs. Surveillance says, X-Hive ranged DPS. Kenji Ellis says, how long does that usually take? Art Noakes says, anyone know where I can get ancestral bow from? Vegas 1v9 says, Hive up, need players 700 plus familiar W mechanics. March 10th. Jimothy says, a data equals 0, hoplite fire staff, /A. Sixican says, join the Starstone Barrows boys and girls. The Quagmire says, I don't remember when they do maintenance to give you a clear time frame. Bleep just returned back to this game after 2 years tonight. It's Alonia says, back. Daddy 8 says, if you have 2 or more 725 pieces Q arenas. Extraspisameo says, can you no longer refine gems? Sazuki Retsuya says, a data equals 0, hardened crystal, / a WTSX8. Kenji Ellis says, well they just did main last night and he was missing then TTTI I guess I'm screwed. Sazuki Retsuya says, a data equals 0, golden scarab, / a WTS. The Quagmire says, but anytime I had any quest bugs a server restart always fixed them, and I finished every quest in the game, at least back then. Yarb says, I just want options to revert the UI, I hate this. Thanks for speed says, X-Hive DPS. Agravane TM says, trying to get a group for Hive. Aldine Mavani says, gem refining got moved to Outfitter Station. Wonder Boy says, can anyone help with Toymaker? Agravane TM says, I got a healer. Extraspisameo says, thank you. Agravane TM says, need 3 more. Eric Valhalla says, I'm down, just came back to the game, been playing since alpha though. Mad the Strat says, how do I get an inv to net worth check? Warhammer 445 says, go bleep. Yarb says, technically it was beta up until this re-release right? Smoking Maruan says, boo-ow. Of Dub Stays High says, you. The Muscat Union Island has declared war on I for control of Brightwood. Step off 187 says, any WT. ILEXMG says, X-Hive DPS. Warhammer 445 says, stop being a bleep. Post-Severance says, isn't Muscat Union the same people who didn't show up for the WW war? The Quagmire says, I was a pre-alpha player, this game has had multiple redirections, and still can't seem to figure out what they want to do with this game. We're still missing like 50% of the map. Dr. Billut says, a data equals 0, hoplite life staff, /a. Sagi Macum says, best leveling weapon from 60-65. Kutchasparrow says, Starstone anyone? Post Severance says, whatever you feel like. Longbone Tony says, lobby up for barnacles and black powder, anyone welcome. Agravane TM says, X-Hive 3 more. Yarb says, blunder opus. Eric Valhalla says, X-Hive. Sagi Macum says, post what do you feel like? Frey Haldor says, X-Hive DPS. ILEXMG says, X-Hive DPS. Mad Willa says, how's the server just started? Burks says, X-Hive. Post Severance says, I've pretty much only run Greysword and Bow since they released it. Midna Elise says, GS and Musket here. Sagi Macum says, Greysword fun? Kutja Sparrow says, Starstone anyone? Midna Elise says, I enjoy it. Post Severance says, to me it is. All the other weapons don't feel right. The Quagmire says, I've always rolled an Insano build, but God knows how things have changed since then. Yarb says, my character model seems closer to the reticle than I remember, am I crazy? Petra Ral says, anyone need to kill the tax collector at Stone Skull Fort? Charlie Darwin says, my name is Mayor Charlie Darwin and I own this realm. Charlie Darwin says, 3. Sagi Macum says, I might give GS a try out then. ILEXMG says, X-Hive DPS. Sagi Macum says, thanks y'all. Vanitas says, X-Glob DPS. Vanitas says, X-Hive DPS. Daddy 8 says, Q Arenas. Midna Elise says, I mean can always change back if you don't like it. The Quagmire says, returning, and seeing all my weapons reset, and not remembering how I set up all my weapons hurts. Mars 2 says, felt. Surveillance says, Hive DPS LFG. ILEXMG says, X-Hive DPS. Midna Elise says, yeah I felt the same way at why they did that, was it Rebel Ants? Aldine Mavani says, they changed 90% of the trees. White Box WB says, anyone dance of the fireflies? Laffy Taffy says, X-Hive DPS ranged. ILEXMG says, X-Hive DPS. Midna Elise says, make sense then. Messina says, is the performance in cities just miserable for everyone else? Keep bouncing under the floor. Aldine Mavani says, only Flail and VG are the same. The Quagmire says, I'm still confused, weren't they going to release dual blade daggers? Eric Valhalla says, F that, let me dual wield swords. Midna Elise says, Messina, are you on an SSD? Messina says, unsure. Agravane TM says, X-Hive healer. The Quagmire says, you want to be running an SSD for just about any game in the last 8 years. ILEXMG says, X-Hive DPS. Crypty TV says, LF heals and tank for Hive. Midna Elise says, if you're on a hard drive that's why it's doing it, the load times on them are to slow it. What changed to make it that way, but after update caused it. Maximus Ultimate says, how's everyone doing tonight? XSGT Weederwitex says, X-Hive DPS. Agravane TM says, well bleep huh. Eric Valhalla says, the game is coded for consoles, that's what changed. XSGT Wiederwatex says, X-Hive DPS. Midna Elise says, I actually don't have a big issue with HDD on a lot of games. Stinky Carrot says, life ring farming anybody? The Quagmire says, trying to figure out what to do after not playing for 2 years lol. Yarb says, set your bandwidth usage higher, this game is a hog. Maximus Ultimate says, same here at the. Messina says, yeah this is pretty bad even on HDD. Maximus Ultimate says, at the Quagmire. Confirm change. Change the siege window to font color equals, ed3d6, font face equals, lishinui /font /nimbus _semibold, font, 8 p.m. - 8:30 p.m., edt, /font. You will not be allowed to change it again for font color equals, FF7171, font face equals, lishinui /font /nimbus _semibold, font, 7 days. /font press circle for no, press square for yes. W1LD55 says, same here. All C7 says, also don't use cheap internet like Cricket lol. Maximus Ultimate says, what weapons are good these days? Midna Elise says, I played on launch quit tried again when the mounts came out quit and now here we are. Crypty TV says, X-Hive. ILEXMG says, X-Hive DPS. Midna Elise says, I'm using GS and Musket Maximus. Yarb says, explaining like 90% of the player base experience lol at Midna. Agravane TM says, X-Hive and a handy. Blue Chew says, are they gonna do a Halloween event this year? Maximus Ultimate says, wish they would. The Quagmire says, seems like I need the expansion to really bother doing anything at this point. Bleep was 625 tank, and 625 DPS bow. Midna Elise says, pretty much XD at Yarb. M4 Kanai says, a data equals, 0, timber, /a. ILEXMG says, X-Hive DPS. Merd3RQC says, GG. Daddy8 says, Q Arenas. XSGT Wiederwatex says, X-Hive DPS. Roadkillin says, bleep off. Grand Boo says, I killed healer. Mine Amis Bocephus says, S. Midna Elise says, so does no one run with PvP flagged anymore? Young4NTV says, overall gear score - we don't have to have the highest gear score equipped to get higher drops, right? Once we get a drop, even if we salvage that, I'll still continue getting that LVL drop or higher. Roadkillin says, unflogged douche. Young4NTV says, or did they change it? Anvil says, no longer need high GS to get high GS. Anvil says, I've gotten 700s back when I was still wearing like 650-660s. Young4NTV says, sweet, thanks. Midna Elise says, I've been running around doing quests flagged for the past hour or so and not had one encounter. Dan Green 80 says, need 2 players and Azit staff for Amrine excavation please. The Quagmire says, ugh, about 40 new shrines to go track down too. Young4NTV says, thought that was the case but wasn't sure if I missed something in an update. Young4NTV says, love you.
Ram's horn.
Roadkillin says, God I hate unflogged people.
We shave off a bit.
Roadkillin says, bunch of babies.
There it is. A
Midna Elise says, I mean I get unflogged if you're not into PvP or whatever, it makes sense. The Quagmire says, until a max level reminds you of why some shouldn't run flagged. Midna Elise says, but non-flagged and antagonizing is just dumb. Midna Elise says, at Techogmire mep part of the game XD.
I admit you're right about
Flacia Penetranti says, X-Hive DPS.
an elixir that's
Kerma says, a data equals 0, Hoplite Rapier, /AUL. The Quagmire says, I used to just chase lobies around. Much more fun than just killing them instantly.
my perceptive friend.
M4 Kanai says, then asterisk.
You wound me.
Jimmy Norris says, hello all.
Latest version of the elixir.
Maximus Ultimate says, hey Jimmy.
Little problem.
The Quagmire says, sorry English second language.
Favorite blossom.
Midna Elise says, man these random disconnects. Jenghis says, where's my guy? M4 Kanai says, same for me. Yarb says, resource tracker still terrible, kinda funny. Flacia Penetranti says, names disappearing in Opera is bleep unplayable. Aggravantium says, X-Hive. Crypty TV says, X-Hive. The Quagmire says, I'm guessing you still can't change character names. Vlad Jorgensen says, all my bullets. Hendrippy Jr. says, Isabella can catch it. No cap. Yarb says, yeah, I know Vlad, me too. Yarb says, not even gold compensation. Daddy Simba says, how long does it take for the world to load in Ulmau? Silstiana says, Isabella Thicka Goth Mommy FRFR. Midna Elise says, instant on SSD. Roadkillin says, unflogged max LVLS running spin fiber roots is gross. Daddy Simba says, I think this game is on my hard drive and this is awful. Daddy 8 says, if you have 725 gear Qarians. Step off 187 says, X-Hive DPS. The Quagmire says, wait, ammo is gone? I had like 50k brim arrows, whoa. Wolf says, X-Hive DPS range. Yarb says, I had more than that. PR0 says, I played on an HDD for years. An SSD is a night and day difference. Flacia Penetranti says, X-Hive DPS ranged. Yarb says, kinda pissed about that. Janed says, agreed. SSD is amazing. Stinky Carrot says, X-Hive DPS ranged. Jenghis says, finding about SSD 10 years late. Roadkillin says, go play Starlight Valley if you are going to run unflogged tourist routes. Daddy 8 says, you will win arenas with 725 gear, queue up. PR0 says, lol. Code Dalian says, lol. Grand Knight Spike says, Grand Knight Spike has reached font color equals, at 63E, level 20/font. Grand Knight Spike says, Grand Knight Spike has reached font color equals, at 63E, level 20/font. Aquawolf says, anyone not playing an MMO on an SSD is crazy in this day. Jenghis says, Stardew asterisk. Silstiana says, lol Imogen being mad people play the XD. Roadkillin says, Stardew. Roadkillin says, Starlight. Janed says, yay, it's necessary in any MMO. FF14, wow, you name it. Roadkillin says, don't matter. Jenghis says, HDDs should be illegal for online play, you're dragging us down. Fickius says, anyone need a healer for anything? I'm bored and my group decided tonight they needed sleep. Klee Camp says, Klee Camp sits. Laffy Taffy says, X-Hive DPS ranged. The Quagmire says, PFFT I run a Gen 5 SSD even though few games even remotely need that read/write.
Potion ingredients.
Aquawolf says, yeah man, put deadlock on your SSD instead of taking 5 minutes to load on your toaster.
Have gold in a bottle here.
Roadkillin says, brew that's not the. Avianite Knight says, I can DPS. Aldine Mavani says, sleep is for the weak.
Finally, we reach my favorite.
XX Dieselx X says, X-Hive let me know what you need me to be.
Once they've had a taste, they'll be through.
Roadkillin says, give me the chance to protect my root instead of taking it over.
You've got the hero.
Migna Elise says, depends on the optimization really like I said before I haven't really had issues other than Starfield and this that had to be on SSD. Fickius says, agreed, who needs sleep? Except me who has to drive 6 hours tomorrow lol. Viriana Origin says, X-Hive. Aldine Mavani says, my car drives for me. The Quagmire says, Starfield. Try Star Citizen. Utah John 1 says, X-Hive heals. Silstiana says, or just run your route better. Klee Camp says, Klee Camp sits. Roadkillin says, or. Roadkillin says, just run flagged. Jenghis says, I prefer my games complete. Happa Fodder says, where the heck do you cut gemstones now? Migna Elise says, heard of it haven't played it. Roadkillin says, not be a little grr. Daddy 8 says, Q arenas activities 3v3 arena, easy content. Roadkillin says, girl. The Quagmire says, but this game isn't complete lol. Jenghis says, that's why I pick Bethesda. Fickius says, gems are cut at Outfitter now, and require jewel crafting. Ma Namus says, X-Hive DPS. Jenghis says, I pray to the Majods. Yarb says, Outfitter I think at Happa. Major Mizato says, lol fail of 76 Bethesda can Sigma. Happa Fodder says, thanks. The Quagmire says, I'm not even joking, about half of the map isn't a part of the game. XX Dieselx X says, X-Hive heals /DPS. Dan Green 80 says, need to with as its staff please and thanks. Migna Elise says, NMN modded Bethesda games. Jenghis says, this game sucked since the economy broke. The Quagmire says, I still want the northern side. Yarb says, wasn't a priority when they had 3k people playing in Mo. Aquawolf says, if it sucks then quit. Jenghis says, Bezos broke the economy here as a dry run for COVID. Fickius says, wait, how would the economy break? It's always been terrible in this game. Migna Elise says, never gonna find the perfect game tbh. Wrecked by Fire says, X-Hive DPS. Daddy 8 says, Arenas is 60 plus and as exp. Migna Elise says, look at Thorn it's pay to win. The Quagmire says, terrible thought process. Imagine folks want something better not worse. Jenghis says, the perfect game is a loving wife. Jenghis says, get into it. XXX Rodunx says, all moss have flaws. Midna Elise says, although once humans pretty great. Aquaelf says, Jenghis that's more rare than a working game. Fickius says, I have a loving wife, she plays this game w/me, but she's sleeping like a loser right now. Burks says, Zive DPS. Midna Elise says, at Jenghis lies all women are the same and will eventually stab you in the back. The Quagmire says, if I wanted to play a perfect Mo I'd go back to UO. Jenghis says, what percent of women play this here? The Quagmire says, 7.5%. Fickius says, 5. Roadkillin says, what's it like having a wife? Jomster says, ig. Aquaelf says, Quagmire likely would in fact know funny enough. The Quagmire says, my ex is on this server somewhere in GL. Yarb says, I have a loving wife, it's nice. Pixel says, probably more like 35-40%. Amali says, I'm always fed. Fickius says, it's like having the life sucked from your body, your bank account drained, and you still don't get laid. Midna Elise says, wow 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 wow. Roadkillin says, must be nice. Amali says, and laundry is always done. Roadkillin says, the women that play this game run unflogged. Fickius says, wait, why all's wife does cooking, and laundry? Roadkillin says, like it's Stardew Valley. Jenghis says, I had an obese wife, she tasted of high fructose corn syrup. Aquaelf says, I can pay a housekeeper to do laundry for less than a wife would use. Jenghis says, but those days are gone. Yarb says, she does the laundry, I usually cook. Musty-X says, 99.99% of statistics are made up. Fickius says, mine must be broken, she plays video games, and cusses.
I've lived in Everfall.
Wrecked by Fire says, X-Hive DPS.
Bottoms up.
Midna Elise says, ignore me on wives, my 6-year relationship just ended in cheating, so don't listen to me. Roadkillin says, mine girl plays Fortnite. Utah John 1 says, X-Hive heals. Roadkillin says, XD. Fickius says, life lesson kids, don't marry redheads. The Quagmire says, I do the cooking and cleaning, otherwise I'm going to get poisoned. Vanitas says, X-Hive DPS. Aquaelf says, that's rough. Vafayan says, now you have a newer model wife XD. The Quagmire says, I've seen women who couldn't even figure out how to boil water. Fast travel. Would you like to fast travel to this location? Press circle for no, press square for yes. Fickius says, you've met my mom? Johnny Gabagool says, I realized women are crazy AF, so I married a dude. Yarb says, I just make good food, it makes sense. Loading. Please wait. Aquaelf says, DW Midna, guys aren't any better, just stay a single Pringle.
As of today,
Iceword says, Yolanda dow 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 da.
ancient miracle elixir.
Johnny Gabagool says, my bro is now my homie, im homie is sexual.
Hey, my
Roadkillin says, want a picture XD.
Of course it did.
Fickius says, I'm a little concerned that Quagmire has met my mom, guys. Iceword says, algo en español. Jenghis says, Jenghis dances. Spooky Juki says, Jenny isn't that gay. Jack Wet says, tuna casserole. Fickius says, it's not gay if he married a dude and they both just go out and bang random women. Roadkillin says, met a lot of women. The Quagmire says, better check if my ex is online watching chat lol. Midna Elise says, foul. Aquawolf says, oof. Roadkillin says, bleep her. Aquawolf says, no don't. Fickius says, taking notes. War00105 says, War00105 says, loser. Fickius says, I mean, why not? Shurveer says, didn't mean to. The Quagmire says, she was a psycho. Brad Pitt's dad says, no worries lol. Spooky Juki says, well I think that's gay, just wear socks and it's fine. Brad Pitt's dad says, lol. Fickius says, I need something to do besides sit here and BS lol. Anyone doing anything fun? Fickius says, I don't think it's our taste. I think most women are just nuts. Valindrain says, agreed. Midna Elise says, went and cheated then got engaged to a dude in prison like how TF that makes sense. Vafayan says, was the sex good at least? Roadkillin says, Star Mattel. Roadkillin says, Ree. Yuri 420 says, WTF. The Quagmire says, I met her playing this game. Another reason why I took a break from this for years lol. Midna Elise says, sex was great XD. Jenghis says, sorry I have no instrument. Vafayan says, XD. Jeremiah says, a data equals 0, mutator carry bonus cash / I can't open this. Spy says, to crawl hold LB, then press in left stick. Aquawolf says, I avoid the game I met my ex in, also ended in cheating lol. Claimy says, Claimy makes a gesture of appreciation. Shitstains says, bunch of virgins. Boozya says, my dad taught me pages. Aquawolf says, okay, not an up arrow to that, to what Quagmire said. Zan W says, X-Hive DPS. Yarb says, too late. Asmodeus Black says, my butt hurts. Digriz says, Digriz does a funny walk with a cane. Yarb says, by the big one. R3D Raven says, so did my Scoutmaster. Fickius says, too late Aqua, we now know the truth about your bleep things. Zafir says, shout out dads. Fickius says, I'll be the con to your Jenghis, D. Sphalanx Drummer says, let's go out. Bam Young Guns says, need respawn points in free for all island. Alandriel says, any grill here? Raven Grim says, Immortal Highlands Turkey. Hendrippy, Jr. says, make a tent outside the zone, die. Fickius says, wait, I'm in the church, where you at Jenghis? Brad Pitt's dad says, is dark matter still needed? Agravantm says, X-Hive heals / tank. The Quagmire says, you need to lure them with money. Aquawolf says, I am highly surpsed people don't read and are surprised the open PvP area is open PvP. Boozya says, any boys like nerf dart-shaped pages. Alandriel says, you scared them with your name Quagmire. Fickius says, wait, isn't the entire map open PvP? Midna Elise says, charcoal if you can get it heated and good coals right, propane for quick and easy. Raven Grim says, Immortal Highlands Turkey on bridge near Iron Rose Shrine. Aquawolf says, natural chung charcoal too, not that briquette bleep. Over Easy says, 1 mil. Flacia Penetranti says, X-Hive ranged DPS. Hajali Da Third says, X for Hive. Midna Elise says, Giggity. Zan W says, X-Hive fire ranged DPS. Yarb says, I think it had peaked 35k people in last 30 days, just looked it up a bit ago. Hajali Da Third says, X for Hive. Fickius says, X Hive, I can do W/E. Alaferis says, I wish my PC stuff transferred to Xbox. XSGT Wiederwitex says, X Hive DPS. Midna Elise says, wait, they did cross-plat but not cross-save leak Destiny or Warframe? Why? The Quagmire says, but my name originates from Magic the Gathering. Lol, I'm such a nerd. Hajali Da Third says, X for Hive. Alaferis says, why I wish they did. Jenghis says, Destiny's bad now tried it today. Alandriel says, Destiny is cross-save BTW. Roadkillin says, they did. Y3 Redua says, X heals. Roadkillin says, this is my guy from when this game first came out. Aquawolf says, bet you're a Golgari player. Alaferis says, I have stuff from day one New World on my PC account. Roadkillin says, exactly. Roadkillin says, all my STFF. Roadkillin says, stuff. Midna Elise says, at Techhogmire mines from Zelda with a twist, lol, I'm a Zelda nerd. Hajali Da Third says, X for Hive September 10th. The Quagmire says, I have the golden Gigashad armor skin, that's rare itself. Diddy Protector says, hey buddy, I'm proud of you. Ratio Tile says, Balor. Booby says, who TF playin' guitar? Shadicus Maximus says, need DPS Hive.
The light of
Mad the Strat says, X tank and healer for Hive. All C7 says, X Hive tank. Avian Ignite says, Invican DPS. Midna Elise says, any bike lovers in here? Been debating on getting an R1. Daddy 8 says, Q3 volts 3S. Avian Ignite says, X Hive. McToasty 96 says, the bleep. McToasty 96 says, Imschuk. Aquawolf says, D. Sin Snipes says, Haye. Sechi says, X Hive healer. Aquawolf says, dude, the fresh servers were all locked for me. Evil Equalizer says, K Outpost. Utsukush Sora says, good. Jenghis says, they should let you join on a fresh just without gold or weapons. Alandriel says, anyone touch grass recently? How is it I don't remember? Daddy 8 says, grass. Utsukush Sora says, no one can beat me in a duel.
Step right up.
Warrior Mad says, Warrior Mad has reached font color equals, at 63E, level 20/font. McToasty96 says, again. Daddy8 says, I'll beat you in a duel. The Quagmire says, dirt. The Quagmire says, it is desert. Gnome Live says, VG/Musket equals 0 skill spam VG and shoot someone while they stand still. Nice gameplay. Aquaulf says, I'll talk grass in another month when it's not hot as bleep. Brad Pitt's dad says, Musket the worst bleep this game. Evil Equalizer says, X healer and DPS for Hive. All C7 says, X tank Hive. Alandriel says, Canadian here, I'll touch grass next summer Mao. Jenghis says, why can't I move into a fresh start at level 60? The Quagmire says, Musket is 0 skill. Say it ain't so, God forbid you zigzag or dive, lol. Mad the Strat says, X2 tanks for Hive. Aquaulf says, sounds like some people dislike Musket and need to get good. Daddy8 says, Adutsakashi Sora 10k duel. Burks says, X Hive DPS. Aquaulf says, same Midna. Eater 33 liters says, X Hive DPS. Midna Elise says, oh nice. Utsukush Sora says, no one can beat me in a duel. The Quagmire says, it was 40 yesterday, was freezing my tush. Sechi says, X healer. Roadkillin says, 52 here in NC. Batlazar says, Batlazar sits. Conrady says, X Hive DPS. Aquaulf says, night it gets nice yeah, finally able to start turning my AC off. Aquaulf says, 64 here, so still a bit warmish, but I'm like dead central. Batlazar says, Batlazar dances. Alandriel says, the guy who asked for the elite train, no clue I have yet to find one. Anvil says, why does changing gear sets insist on removing all my potions regardless? Daddy8 says, I'll beat anyone on this server 1v1 with pots. Midna Elise says, I'm northeast over by Shreveport. Anvil says, if I slot them. The Quagmire says, but I might be the only one who's going to be eating ice cream with a blizzard outside. Armied Mortarin says, lol, pathetic. Constraint says, just taking a lil nappy amp. Midna Elise says, at Techogmire nope I love ice cream. Armied Mortarin says, lol, pathetic. Ma says, if anybody is leaving Valhalla and want to donate to the Invincible Research Fund please DM me. The Quagmire says, ooh like-minded. Eater 33 liters says, X Hive DPS. Aquaulf says, ice cream when it's freezing outside is October 10th. Batlazar says, Batlazar waves. Batlazar says, Batlazar gives the thumbs up. Jack Wetz says, why would we leave Valhalla? Aquaulf says, speaking of, I'm gonna go grab some of the strawberry ice cream I got from the local creamery. Squeaky L Toy says, you got that right Aqua, made 300 pints today. Wrecked by Fire says, X Hive tank / DPS or healer. The Quagmire says, meh, I've already been on all the servers at this point. The Quagmire says, cuz, Mara, Lith, Val, and whatever others I can't remember. Midna Elise says, I could eat a whole tub if I don't watch myself XD. Scottrick says, Scottrick dances. Scottrick says, Scottrick sits. Squeaky L Toy says, we made pumpkin cheesecake, lemon meringue pie, sticky/sweet salty and double chocolate cookie dough. Dr. Trill says, yo lemme get some of that. Gilgamesh Khan says, Gilgamesh Khan dances. Midna Elise says, ooh cookie dough. Onimbus says, sounds like bleep. Jenghis says, nice, Khan. Kirknos says, yo 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 question how do I remove costumes o_o. Dr. Trill says, send me $50 and they'll tell you for free. Jdunkan says, M1 Forge lobby up quick farming Inferno fire staff. Mageston says, click the item while in the costumes page. The Quagmire says, I made peanut butter ice cream, with caramel. That stuff will kill you. Scarge says, oh, oh. Midna Elise says, same way you apply them but click the item and remove it. Udquatanamimi says, Jenghis are you actually Mongolian or just like Genghis Khan? Alandriel says, so those stronghold train, still a thing? Onimbus says, R.I.P. Joe Rogan. Ferox Rivas says, did they change anything with resources in this update? Frost the 4 says, I gotta be the guy that asks, can guilds still own settlements and all that jazz? Jenghis says, death not Mongol. Aquaelf says, strawberry ice cream acquired. Mustachio Mage says, aren't we all a little Mongolian? Udquatanamimi says, I see, I'm actually Mongolian umfao. Lana Lakewood says, need to for the depths. Jenghis says, nice. The Quagmire says, made my own fresh peanut butter, enhanced its sweetness plus salt. Made my own caramel as well, I pretty much make everything from scratch. I don't buy whatever they have in stores. Frost the 4 says, so there's no PvP in this update? Or guilds can't fight for settlements anymore? Onimbus says, who here has seen 3 men swimming? It was a sad movie. Recall to in. Would you like to recall to this in? Press circle for no, press square for yes. Haldane says, J. Aquaelf says, I wish I felt like I had the time for the TBH, but I've been trying to be better about cooking and whatnot. Step off 187 says, a data equals 0, fire staff of the scholar, / a WTS. Aquaelf says, got a brand new air fryer last month, October 10th for quick lazy meals. Lodakrap says, Lodakrap gives the thumbs up. The Quagmire says, I had my grandmother and mom drill cooking into me. Hal Kazan says, nobody cares. Onimbus says, peanut butter on a pepperoni pizza is nice. Midna Elise says, what's sad is SAO alatization, man that death scene hits you. Alandriel says, rip Liam Nielsen. Lana Lakewood says, looking for 2 for the depth expedition. Irx as I sits. The Quagmire says, if I want something I just make it myself. Liquor, sweets, breads, pasta whatever. Aquaelf says, that's fair, I watched my grandmother cook a lot so I can, she just doesn't let anyone help lol. Aquaelf says, bleep, making bread is such a mood. Alandriel says, rest in pissesman. Jdunkan says, need 2 DPS Forge M1 lobby is up. The Quagmire says, bread is easy lol. Armied Mortaran says, why give the quests in a PvP zone? I guess to give the purse something to just sit and gank. Aquawolf says, I need to, my local store makes its own and it's so good. Brad Pitt's dad says, I don't get how people watch streamers with that many views, chat isn't a thing. Frost the 4 says, I don't understand how this is much diff from the other one, looks like PvP is still a thing. So are companies conquering cities? Aquawolf says, it's easier to go read the updates than have someone list them off. Kurtnos says, please someone tell me how to remove costume. The Quagmire says, making pasta, that takes a while to master just right. I mostly use bread flour for its higher protein, makes great noodles. TH333 says, a data equals, 0, pattern, smelting clothing, / a can you sell the crafted piece of this? Frost the 4 says, can companies battle for and take over settlements and do taxes? Daddy 8 says, Q arenas, get your bleep pushed in. Musty-X says, T. Musty-X says, yes. Lana Lakewood says, need one for the depths. Mageston says, Mageston waves. Frost the 4 says, can companies still battle for and take over territories? Do taxes? Brad Pitt's dad says, yes. Musty-X says, a data equals, 0, smelter smock, / a data equals, 1, smelter shoes, / a data equals, 2, smelter's pants, / a data equals, 3, smelter's mitts, / a. Frost the 4 says, sick. Yarb says, what's the point of gunpowder and feathers if they removed ammo? Frost the 4 says, Bennett how they claim to have made this no longer a PvP focused game lol. Spooky Juki says, cause it's got cushionies now. Onimbus says, building furniture and items. Brad Pitt's dad says, I wish they would make a PvP flagged only server. Armied Mordarin says, exactly, just gave the pers the ability to gank the ers and feel good about it really. The Quagmire says, it hasn't been a true PvP game since Alpha. Archlord Rinks says, LF tank and DPS-BNBM1-GF. TH333 says, sweet. Stinky Carrot says, XDPS Hive. Daddy 8 says, 5k duel outside WW you can't beat me. Frost the 4 says, agreed Pit's dad. Flacia Penetranti says, Oper is unplayable RN, names disappearing all the time. Onimbus says, just wait till console noobs get higher levels, this game should change in the PvP aspect. Frost the 4 says, anyone from Bear Force 1 still around?
Do you sense it, stranger?
The Quagmire says, console players will leave PvP in a week lol mouse/KB just too much advantage. Fart Boy says, it's a PvP island, yeah, and some people have common courtesy. Fart Boy says, dumb. Fosgrai says, Fosgrai dances. Daddy 8 says, duel 5k you can't beat me outside WW. Armied Mordarin says, punch of musket and bow gankers just waiting at the gates of the PvP zone. Merlin says, meanies. Frkdabtaitka says, yay who are those guys? Frost the 4 says, how do I flag forward? Frost the 4 says, that sound of mining and cutting trees. Frost the 4 says, how I missed it so. Aquawolf says, true. Aquawolf says, who needs to go outside when this game has so much outside?
Are there still humans?
The Quagmire says, sus. Udquatanamimi says, exactly. Frost the Four says, literally all of us. Frost the Four says biology. Frost the Four says, but bleep. Tawny Kaiden says, but bleep them? Fosgrawi says, Fosgrawi dances. Jdunkan says, need 1 DPS 4 Gen 1 come get that inferno. Aquaulf says, beat Biology's bleep so I can get my MMO fix. Frost the Four says, haha. Udquatanamimi says, but bleep me. Gilbert07238 says, lol. Cashmoni 522 says, we need 1 for Hive of Gorgon. Udquatanamimi says, no bleep. Aquaulf says, that's okay, I'm a total bleep. Udquatanamimi says, oh okay. Amali says, it'll help with Forge.